As always, we ask you to text NAACP to 40649. Take the pledge to vote. If you would, please, ma'am, please, sir. 86699 series joining us now from the oldest and boldest, most cussed and most discussed civil rights organization. Joining us now, the president of the NAACP, Derrick Johnson. Derrick, good morning to you, man.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine, man. Always good to hear your voice and speak with you. First of all, you all have issued a statement regarding the NFL's policy, the new policy when it comes to the anthem. Please share the NAACP's position with the audience, if you would.
You know, it's unfortunate that the owners decided to split a baby that could not survive, and they did so.
Mm-hmm.
The right of players to protest, to use their platform to advocate for social justice, has been one of the things that we've seen in this country have created a more perfect union, whether it was Jim Brown in the 60s or Muhammad Ali using his platform as a boxer, and so many others from Jackie Robinson. That has been a tradition in this nation that has actually created more good than many other things we've seen. Players are not property. Players are not slaves. Players are individuals who are impacted by the community at large. And if the community at large create scenarios where if they are driving their car and they are pulled over because they're black, or if their siblings or relatives are being harassed by police, they should be able to use their platform peacefully, respectfully, to advocate a position to create a better society for all. So it is unbelievable that the owners they're so tone deaf that they would actually issue a policy the way that they did.
What would you advise the players and the players union to do right now, Derrick, in response to this?
You know, I've been in touch with Players Union, and one of the things I'm seeing every review whether or not this policy violates the collective bargaining agreement they're currently under with the owners. I will hope that the players would resist this type of policy, this infringement on their ability to have a voice. In fact, many of the stadiums that they play in are publicly financed stadiums.
Right.
You cannot curtail one's voice in a public space. You know, there's so many things that can be done. I'm just shocked at the level of tone deafness that the owners currently have. You don't have this in baseball or basketball, and I believe because the owners and the Players Association actually have a relationship where owners listen and they empathize and they understand that the value of the players, it is not just their athleticism, but the value of their players is their humanism. They're human beings that are citizens that should be able to fully engage in the way in which they amplify the concerns of the greater society.
Derrick Johnson with us, president of the NAACP. I think that's a critical point you just made in terms of acknowledging that these players, many of them are in publicly financed stadiums and public venues. I am inferring from that statement that some legal action is being considered. Is that an option?
You know, it is. I'm floored, right? So I haven't got to the point of what action we're going to take or support. I want to see the players and the Players Association stand up and want to stand with them, because this is a true infringement on their voice. And we should not, as a community, black, white, green, or yellow, sports fan or non-sports fan, stand idly by and see this take place.
Yeah. Also, today, the Starbucks is having its anti-bias training. Is the NAACP playing any role in that today, Derrick? I know you've been in contact with Starbucks, but are you playing any specific role in this implicit bias training today?
No, we're not playing any role in today's trading. We are encouraged with the fact that Starbucks have decided to proactively pursue a course of action to correct what took place in Philadelphia, but more broadly address the possibility of it taking place in the future. We've been in ongoing conversation with Starbucks. We're anxious to see what happens next, what happens tomorrow, and moving forward. This product didn't evolve because Starbucks exists. It did not take place because of one event. This is something that's societal in nature. We're sitting in corporate realities, public realities, personal realities, and to take this initial step, I think it's a huge step for us. It is now what? What are we going to do to move forward? And, we encourage anytime a corporation like Starbucks seek to address an issue as opposed to deny issue, we should commend them, but as we also watch to make sure that it's not a one thing and that's all, because you can't fix this in one day.
Yeah. So we will see what comes, and that's really what I was thinking too. You really answered my next question as to whether or not today is even sufficient enough, because it is next to impossible to resolve this just in one day.
Right. I'm encouraged because Starbucks actually has some leadership at the top of their chain with Roz Brewer, who's a COO, who African American from Detroit, Spelman graduate, who understand not only the significance of the event and the opportunity, but she has to live the reality because she has young boys just like many of us. And so I am just encouraged to have leadership who not only are well positioned to make a difference, they can empathize with the outcome of the difference that they are seeking to make. So we're supportive of this effort, and we're looking forward to what's next, what come out of it. For me, with young boys, 18-year-old, 23-year-old, and a 12-year-old, the images that's displayed of our young people, of our young men, they're very important.
Yeah.
And so out of this, one of the things NAACP we want to do is push positive images about who we are, who our young people are, in a way, and people, when they see them as a child, if it's a 12-year-old boy or a 14-year-old boy who missed school bus or simply asking for directions, or see them as young 20-somethings who are seeking to be entrepreneurs and only want to use the public space that a company like Starbucks provide to pursue their entrepreneurship. And they can be seen for that and seen for their humanity and not seen as some type of predator or individual to be in fear of.
Yeah.
Those images are important. And from your platform and my platform and all of our platforms, we must begin to pursue a course where we can promote positive images so when people see us, they see the positive. And if they don't see the positive and react negatively, we create a positive landscape where they're held accountable for discrimination, racism, and bias.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Derrick Johnson with us, president of NAACP. If I can make a suggestion too, Derrick, in your conversations with them, because one of the ways in which they need to be held accountable, Starbucks needs to be demanded that they release the information on how many African American people of color and women licensees there are, how many African American women and people of color managers there are. And while they can, they boast that, their baristas, their employees are a very diverse population, that may be true. But in terms of licensees and managers, we don't have those numbers. So I would just humbly suggest that in your deliberations that they share that, because that also is determination in terms of leadership. How many African Americans, people of color, and women are actually at the helm at Starbucks, And
I absolutely agree. And, you have to have a level of sensitivity. You have to place managers in situations where they can be successful and they understand the community in which the store is operating. You cannot bring a manager into an inner city store And the only experience that Metro ever had with the realities of the inner city is based on television. No more than you could take a manager from a person from the inner city and now acculturate them to the realities of a rural or suburban area. There is a level of sensitivity that you have to have in any of these scenarios. And I believe that Starbucks is looking in that direction, but I hear you loud and clear nonetheless. The diversity picture, the snapshot is also important because that's the starting point we can all begin, where we all can begin to see whether or not the company is starting from a good place, and so we can benchmark and see where it grows to.
Also, we just had Memorial Day weekend, Black Bike Week, and that commemoration. You all are monitoring still Black Bike Week in South Carolina, correct?
We've been involved with Black Bike Week in South Carolina for over 20 years now. We filed 2 lawsuits. We've had a consent order. We send staff in to monitor to make sure that community in Myrtle Beach comply with just treating the Black Bikers Weekend the same they treat as the Biker Weekend. You know, I remember first learning of this, it was actually in the late 90s. And the fact, the reality that one weekend is Biker Weekend and everything is normal, then the very next weekend is Black Biker Weekend and they changed the rules. And as a result of that, we had to file a lawsuit with an association because you cannot just openly treat one class of people differently. And so we have consistently monitored the weekend, reported on it to make sure that the bikers on this weekend is treated the same as the bikers of another weekend.
What are the differences in treatment, Derrick?
The flow of traffic, access to facilities, the hours that the establishments are open, the lack of access to establishments. So it runs the gamut.
Yeah.
One weekend for traffic one way, another weekend for traffic has changed. There's another scenario where there's been establishments who would serve patrons and then require payment. The very next weekend, they require patrons to pay up front as opposed to the service they normally serve. So it runs the gamut, both public and private problems and disparities.
Yeah. Also, the NAACP folks is looking into a hanging in South Carolina. The Mississippi State Conference is calling for the continued investigation of the circumstances surrounding the death of Willie Andrew Jones Jr., an African-American man whose body was discovered hanging from a tree in the front yard of a Scott County, Mississippi residence in February of this year. Still not a lot of information, or is that an investigation still ongoing, Derrick?
From my understanding, it's still ongoing. I will be sitting with the president of the Mississippi State Conference today to get an update. And we'll see what the outcome is going to be in that scenario. Like Mark, you've been on the air for a while now. You've seen these. You've seen some that there was a lot of smoke, and therefore we found that there was fire. And we've seen some that there was a lot of noise, no smoke, no fire. So before we rush to judgment, I want to make sure the reports we're receiving is accurate. We've had fake news in both ways. We've had fake news because you have some folks aggressively trying to establish a voice by looking at scenarios that's most egregious, or create scenarios that's more egregious than the actual facts would dictate. So I will be sitting down gathering additional facts today.
And I shared with the audience just before you came on what I shared with you last week, the situation in Bluffton, South Carolina, where the young woman was dragged out of her car. Dick Gregory's son sent me the information, and the family reached out to him. So I think we'll probably need the NAACP to get involved in that scenario.
I'm up smiling because Dick Gregory is still advocating past his death,
That's
but he's still on the scene. That's all right.
And also, lastly, Derrick, just a few moments left. Lou Myers, former executive vice president of NAACP, has passed away.
You know, Lou is one of those lawyers that was always on the scene, but so many people didn't know him. At one point, he not only served as counsel in NAACP, but he was lawyer for Jesse Jackson and Louis Farrakhan, all within a short period of time, and some of which overlapped. Good brother who, out of Houston, started practicing in Mississippi, in North Mississippi Rural Legal Services, and was the original lawyer on a case filed against the state where they were seeking, what they were not seeking, they were actually funding historically black colleges differently than they was funding white schools. Left from here after some real good fights, went to Chicago, established a successful practice, and went back and forth between Chicago and Houston. In fact, when I was in law school in Houston, had an opportunity to spend more time with him there. So he's just a phenomenal individual. Phenomenal individual.
Long live the spirit of Lou Myers. Yes, no, I agree. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, you're right. We long live the spirit of Lou Myers. Derrick Johnson, president of the NAACP, NAACP.org. Text NAACP to 40649. Derrick, as always, my friend, thank you. And I'll be reaching out to you later today on that situation in South Carolina, okay?
I look forward to it. Again, we got to go vote. Thank you for promoting the text, Mark, and continue your good work. You know, oftentimes having the voice of the movement is as vital to the movement as the people, because it's the voice that keeps the people motivated, focused, and informed. So continue to do what you do. Yes,
sir, my brother. I will. At your service. Convention coming up too, folks. NAACP.org. Check everything out there. Thanks, Derrick.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back on the radio, folks. SiriusXM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Tune in.